for me, I love that week. It was great. There's nothing better than winning in Philadelphia, winning in Washington, and getting on the bus and driving out. They still don't like us, so you still get the 2-finger salute. So, it's great. I think everybody's focus dials in a little bit. You don't want to make it seem like it's bigger. We always talk about that in the playoffs, and especially when you're playing for a Super Bowl, that you try and keep that same routine. You don't want to deviate from what your traditional schedule has been, but there just always seems to be a heightened sense of focus when you go into those types of games. So we always enjoyed getting ready for Philadelphia, especially. I think you're exactly right. That became that was the main rival for us in the 90s in the division. So
let's talk about the Eagles this year. It's an interesting team. I think offensively they're pretty powerful. I think the thing that frustrates people is scheme-wise, they're still trying to sell themselves on their new OC, and by them I mean, the media and fans who freak out about everything, just like Cowboy fans do down here. But it feels like it's a turnover issue there. Far more turnovers from the offense. Defensively, there are some weird numbers to try to figure out how good they are, especially, I suppose, back in that secondary. I would just kind of love to hear the Daryl Johnston overview of the Eagles. Maybe let's compare this group to the team that darn near should have won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think right now there's not a comparison. We saw them last year. Early December. It was the last really, really good game they played before Jalen got hurt. And they were an absolute machine. And, it was really impressive. Whatever they wanted to do offensively, they just come off of, I think it was Green Bay that they put up almost 360 rushing, and then they had another huge day passing. So it was basically pick your poison. What do you want to do? Because this is how we're going to beat you. And that's kind of how we were offensively back in the day. It didn't matter. We kind of had our game plan going into it. But, if you came out to take away the running game with Emmett, then we were going to exploit your decisions and the matchups on the outside in the pass game and vice versa. So I really think that's where Philadelphia was last year. I don't know what it is this year. I don't know if it's, kind of that A.J. Brown thing earlier in the year when he, kind of wanted the ball more and was very, outspoken about it. Now he's followed up and just had a tremendous 6-game run. But, there's still something amiss in the pass game. And as they're trying to fix that, I think they get away from what they're really, really good at. And that's the run game. And then everything kind of comes off of that. So I haven't bought in yet. And when we did the game earlier this season, I understood what the Philly fans were frustrated about. Sometimes you see the offense on a play and it's completely out of sync. The ball goes into a dead spot on the field because there's a breakdown in communication between Jalen and the wide receiving corps, which you shouldn't have right now. So I think it's always challenging when you lose your coordinators. And for Philadelphia to lose them both, that's a big hit to the chemistry of the team. We don't know the importance of not just Shane Steichen as the offensive play caller, but, really the kind of the steadying influence. And even though that Jalen Hurts, has known, the new offensive coordinator for a long time, it's still, there's a process you're going to go through to get really comfortable and understand exactly, what he likes in certain situations. And I still don't think they're there yet.
Yeah, it's different. They're still winning, and they're adding pieces. And then today, the team that is oddly struggling the most in the NFL over the last 3 weeks, or at least one of them, they haven't won yet, is the San Francisco 49ers. They had Chase Young to bolster their defensive pass rush, and I don't know where you stand on the Cowboys standing pat and seeing their main rival or one of their main rivals kind of go all in, but there's a lot of people that are upset around here.
I was disappointed that they didn't try and address, the tackle position. I think that has to be a concern, moving forward. That to me was the one area I would have been working hard in. I don't know what the market was for a swing tackle. I don't know, what you could have done, to go out and really kind of try to take somebody that was, down the road a bit in their career. But, I think they really needed to, if they were going to be active, that's where they needed to be. The Chase Young addition in San Francisco, they added Randy Gregory. They already have Nick Bosa, Drake Jackson. I mean, they've got a lot of edge rushers out there. I don't know how much that changes the metric for them. You watch Chase Young and, unless he changes in that atmosphere, unless the culture in San Francisco pulls him in and forces him to be an every play, all out hustle guy, and you start to see the Chase Young that I think a lot of people expected to see in the NFL years ago follow up that defensive rookie of the year season. But I really, when they watch him, to me, it's always been Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen inside. I thought Montez Sweat was more of an issue on the outside than Chase was. He's battled injuries, so I really don't know how much that changes the needle in the NFC. I think it's more, I think Kevin Byard's a hell of a player. I think with Philadelphia getting him on the back end, to go in that group, that to me is a little bit more concerning with a 7-1 divisional opponent that you got to worry about down the stretch. So, and also just everything that we talked about. Philadelphia is just not hitting on all cylinders yet, but they're very capable of turning that around. So, to me, it's still Philadelphia. Has Brock Purdy come down to earth? There's a lot of questions that we have about San Francisco right now, and Chase Young and Randy Gregory don't change that for me.
Back to the Cowboys and how they match up with the Eagles, it does occur to me that now we're getting into a stretch of games where we do have some real wide receivers to deal with. And as I look at the Cowboys' metrics, it's pretty interesting. They have not strayed at all from their love of man coverage. They are 32nd in the NFL in zones and first in the NFL in man, and that is leaning into it for sure. The other thing that jumps out at you is the way they play middle field closed single high safety. They are, I want to say, 30th in the NFL in two high coverages, Moose. And so that, of course, two high versus single high, what you're talking about there is having some help over the top on a guy like Tyreek Hill. I don't think you can play middle field close against the Dolphins or you'll be dead. And I assume A.J. Brown, despite being very different than Tyreek Hill, might be used in a somewhat similar way where you'd love to give help on him, but it's tougher to do if you're not going to play, a middle field open. So I was just kind of curious how you see the Cowboys leaning into what they want to do, but now facing guys that might be able to attack that sort of thing.
I don't think you get from what your core is. I think that would be something that Dan Quinn would adjust during the course of the game. It's kind of interesting out in Seattle. They're kind of, moving away from that style as well, kind of going to a more varied coverage, getting away from, the old Legion of Boom style. And that was a fantastic, group of players that came together and had a magical 5-year run. And, when you have that unique situation, you can basically line up and say, this is what we do, try and beat us. The Tampa Bay defense when they were playing the Tampa 2, the Ravens in that defense in 2000. Obviously that probably the biggest one is the 85 Bears. When you're doing something and you are so good at it because of the personnel you have, you just don't deviate. You force people to come out. I'm not saying that that's where Dallas is right now, but I do believe that with their mix of rush and coverage, they complement each other. The ball has to come out quick. You play tight man coverage. I think at its core, with the middle of the field closed, that's something that Dan Quinn has always, had as part of his defense. Now there's going to be variance from it, and it should be a game-to-game adjustment. If you get a receiver that all of a sudden is taking advantage of you in certain situations, I think you adjust. But we don't fear anybody, right? You never want to go into a game and change what you do well because you're afraid of what they may do. And I think that's where that's the biggest thing. Players are smart, and if they see you start to change, then they know that you're losing confidence in what they can do with their abilities.